What's up, everybody? Thrall's Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin.
And we have yet another album review. And, well, this one came out on Friday the 13th, but we're reviewing it on Saturday the 14th, which is definitely less interesting. So today, we are going to go over the latest offering from Krieg, Ruiner. This also comes out, again, on Friday the 13th in October. On Profound Lore Records, this band formed in 1997 in New Jersey. Even though it does not sound like it's from New Jersey, this sounds pretty Norwegian. We'll get to that. This is their 9th full-length overall. I got in this band with their 2014 album Transient, and not too long ago they did a pretty decent split with Integrity, which, yeah, I pretty much follow Integrity anywhere. And for those that don't know, this is US black metal, very much in the vein of, like, second wave black metal. Like, it is right in line with bands like Darkthrone, Mayhem, maybe some Bathory Worship, though that's more first wave, but it's the old raw stuff. This band also features current and former members of bands like Woe, Knockmistium, Scorched, and Rumpelstiltskin Grinder. So it's kind of an interesting pedigree of bands in there.
I actually have never listened to this band. Those of you that have watched this channel for a long time know that I was a very, very late arrival to black metal, and that I am very picky still as it goes as far as black metal is concerned. So I had never heard these guys.
I mean, I'm picky when it comes down to black metal too. Like, generally, I'm a fan of like more riffy black metal.
Riffy.
I do like, you know, the cold atmospheric stuff and like some of the second wave stuff. I mean, we already caught a raft of shit for ranking Transylvanian Hunger so low in our Darkthrone ranking. I still stand by that. It's not one of my favorites. But this is maybe not entirely in that vein, but this definitely holds on to just pure early 90s Norway. Like, it has like all the hallmarks of Norwegian black metal. These dudes sound like they were born with corpse paint on and possibly already had an arson charge within like a week of being alive.
Yeah, even though they're from Jersey, you could have easily told me that they were holed up in a lair in Norway somewhere, and I would have believed you.
Yeah. All the hallmarks are here in terms of like the overall sound. You have the droning tremolos. The guitar tone is very gainy and kind of sizzly. I mean, very cold. The production and style in terms of like the songwriting is very raw, very minimalist. The production here, honestly, for what they were going for, I think is pretty solid. They got Dan Lowndes from Cruciamentum to do the master, and it was mixed by Alex Poole, who is their lead guitarist, and they wanted to capture clearly this cold Norwegian sound, and I'd say they did it, and honestly, they mixed it pretty well. Like, the levels are pretty good.
Generally, my complaint about most black metal that I've heard is that the raw mix just sounds like butt. Coming from being so heavily versed in death metal or even tech death for a while, which was just grossly clean production, like, it took a little bit of time for me to get used to black metal's raw analog approach. But this at least sounds a little bit more, I don't want to say polished, but like clean sounding.
It's definitely not polished. Like, it's really raw sounding, but again, it's mixed well. Like, everything is separated so it doesn't sound like a wall of tremolo mud.
Yeah. You can hear the drums. You can actually even hear the bass work in some of these songs. And the guitars sit nicely, and although I thought the vocals sat a little bit in the back in the beginning, they don't.
They move around. Honestly, the vocals are kind of a high point on here for me, just because dude is just going for it.
Yeah.
Songs like Fragments of Nothing and The Execution in the Kingdom of Ideas, it's a really interesting song title, have some really cool, deeper vocals, like, because most of this is just a ghastly scream, lots of reverb, lots of just extra oomph on them too. Like, they're very dramatic. When you get down to the breakdown on Red Rooms, oh my god, the dude sounds like he's dying. Like, he just walked into a dark room full of like Legos and thumbtacks and just decided to take a jog. It's horrific screaming, and honestly contributes heavily to the atmosphere.
I would say that a good 70 to 80% of the hellacious atmosphere here is comprised of vocals. These blood-curdling screams. This dude is bleeding from the throat.
Yeah, it sounds very cold, like he went jogging when it was like -10 outside and just went for it and then came back in and smoked a couple of cools and was like, all right, I'm ready to do my vocal take. And this album opens in like kind of like a sinister, very old school fashion. Bulwark and Fragments of Nothing are both fiercely old school songs, and they sound, I mean, as evil as like any like second wave black metal act. But as this album went on, there's definitely more of like an emotional sort of ride on this.
Lots of ebb and flow. Like, it goes from darker to just sad. Especially Solitarily a Future Renounced. That song is pretty fucking sad.
Yeah, the tremolo melodies are just, I don't know, dreary. They don't have that sinister edge. The vocals sound more desperate and pleading on there rather than just like screaming blasphemy in your face. Like, it's just, like kind of dark, but like in a more depressive way.
And a little bit lower registered tremolo too. Like the first couple songs, I mean, again, I don't listen to enough black metal to be able to make comparisons, but like the first couple songs, I don't want to say they're upbeat because they're not, but like it sounds a little bit darker and a little bit more depressive.
And a lot of this really kind of just sticks to, I mean, kind of the Transylvanian Hunger thing where it's like kind of a static blast. Like they do break it up, but generally, because it's kind of a minimalistic approach, it segues into one section and then goes right back to the blast and tremolo. Like sometimes the tremolo melodies will change up, and honestly, there's some really good ones on here. But after a certain point, they do get kind of static. So we kind of ended up like looking for stuff that kind of broke out of that mold a bit. And there are some songs that definitely do that.
No Gardens Grow Here is one that immediately stuck out because instead of starting with a blast beat and some tremolos, it kind of has like almost this waltzy swing to it.
Yeah, and the guitar melodies are just sort of, kind of like gothic, depressive. Honestly, they kind of gave me like the same vibe as like Catatonia's Brave Murder Day. Like that's just a dreary, sad album, albeit like not necessarily black metal, but it kind of has that same tone. And it kind of builds into the blast beats after that, because I mean, almost every song in here has blast beats. I think every song in here has blast beats, and it's kind of the same one. But I liked hearing that slow build up to it. And the last track, The Lantern and the Key, I really like just the whole vibe of that. And again, it's one that builds into the blast beats. Like, you know, there's no shortage of blast beats or tremolo riffs in here. So hearing some stuff that is not that is kind of refreshing. And this song kind of opens in really interesting fashion. You have isolated drums where it sounds like the drummer's doing like a bolt thrower sort of drum intro there. Like, all right, he's got the double time thing going. And then what sounds like a goblin sat on a thumbtack or something like that. This huge, just massive scream that carries out. And then you're kind of into these really like solid, somber melodies again. And there's some cool songwriting dynamics on this song in particular.
Well, and that song too is heavier in nature. It almost sounds kind of death doomy. It's got the lower registered tremolos, like something you'd hear in like Fossilization almost. It just sounded like darker and more evil and more sinister than I thought the rest of the record did.
Yeah, this album kind of goes through like bouts of depression and then bouts of rage. And I kind of like that it is, you know, not just one consistent mood on there, but like, I don't know, maybe the pacing of it is a little odd. This last track showcased a lot of stuff that I thought could have been, you know, around the middle of the album to kind of break it up, because you have a lot of songs that do sound similar just because they're doing kind of similar things. There's even some like almost clean vocals on The Lantern and the Key. They're more like spoken word, but there's like a weird static filter on them. They sound kind of ghostly and haunting. But there is a mode that is repeated on here a little bit too much that kind of, you know, took me out of it. That definitely came up on Manifested Ritual Horror. While I think it's cool for what it is, like it does the tremolos, it does the blast beat, it has got the cold, icy sound, it sounds evil, it was kind of dull, and there's some really strange transitions in it. It goes from like the blast beat and tremolo to like kind of an old punk stomp. It's kind of a cool like nod, because I can't imagine like that breakdown is rooted in anything metal, like, because it really sounds like Sex Pistols or Ramones, except being played by a black metal band.
Yeah, I mean, there's a breakdown. I guess something I could say about this song, maybe not in such a negative light, would be that at this point in the game, it's the first time where it switches up from, blast beats and tremolo to that punk section. Like, it makes it kind of also stand out a little bit.
Yeah, because honestly, that isn't repeated anywhere else on this album. And I have to say, like, the opening track, Bulwark, while it does set a mood, it does set the atmosphere for it, it gets really repetitious really early on. Like, it almost has just 2 sections to it. And there is, like, a little bit of, like, some added melody and a little bit of flair towards the end, but the rest of it is alternating between a static blast beat and this, groovy section, which admittedly has a really cool melody on it. It's just, you get tired of almost anything if it's repeated ad nauseum, forever. And this opening track being 6.5 minutes, it kind of just, dragged for a bit there.
And really, too, I think with the first few songs, at least for me personally, had it not been for the vocal dynamics and that whole kind of switch up in performance, the first few songs I felt kind of melted together. A lot of the melodies sound the same, and when you have nothing but tremolo and blast beats, like, it kind of felt hard to tell apart, almost.
And yeah, I get that, that's part of the sound. Joining on these icy cold tremolos, it creates an atmosphere, it creates a mood. That's a big part of black metal. And this band does a pretty good job of, like, peppering in really cool melodies within these tremolos. It's just, it kind of gets static after a while, and it kind of makes it hard to tell apart from other songs, even when it comes down to, like, picking out the melodies and guitars, because they're just gainy and noisy sounding.
That all being said, another standout track for me was actually an execution of the Kingdom of Ideas. Much like I stated that the Lantern and the Key was a little bit darker and heavier as far as the tremolos, an execution of the Kingdom of Ideas is aggressive.
Yes.
Like, it's heavy, it's dark, and it's flat out aggressive, and that doesn't really occur anywhere else either.
Yeah, honestly, it was a big standout for me too. Like, I liked that aggression. It felt evil and sinister again, and at that point, it kind of, like, dwelled in the sad for a while. Granted, I think Red Ruins is probably my big standout in terms of, like, just a different song. The vibe of that is just particularly bleak and just kind of unsettling, but Execution kind of brought, like, the old church burning sort of like sinister level of black metal again. I was like, all right, that I can get really behind that. And most people that watch the show know that, I'm a sucker for riffy black metal. Like, that's generally my style. And the more, like, droning tremolo stuff, while I do like some bands, it's harder for me to get into. It's maybe a little bit too much of, like, an atmospheric thing. And I mean, I'll even say that this album, it does a good job of creating an atmosphere. Like, the opening Bulwark has, like, a brief little kind of ambient sample before the guitars and screams and blasts come in. But the last track, The Lantern and the Key, granted, I really like that song. In fact, I thought it was something good to kind of break up the arguably monotonous nature of this album. But the ending sample, it sounds like it came out of, like, a horror movie or, like, a Halloween, haunted house. Like, you take everyone to over Halloween and, let your friend that's, like, nearsighted take the lead. And, like, don't worry, we'll tell you if someone's going to jump out.
Or even the last Blue Dust Nord record.
Yeah.
Actually. Or Portal.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Something that, while it may have appeared briefly in the beginning of Bulwark, like, there's nothing like that on the rest of the album. And I would state that even the overall vibe of this record doesn't necessarily dictate the creepiness that was found in the last 30 seconds of the last song.
Yeah, it feels just sort of tagged on. Like, it goes on for, over 30 seconds, I would say.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it kind of belongs to the album. Like, it has, like, a totally different sort of, like, unsettling nature, like something you would associate with, like, something that isn't raw black metal. This sounds like it's kind of, like, too much for raw black metal. Like, I think they would just do, like, screams and, add a bunch of reverb and, like, pick scraping or something like that. Something that would sound more, old school, like analog. This sounds like it's, like, from a horror flick again. So, I don't know, kind of an odd ending to this. But overall, honestly, I thought this was pretty decent. I mean, it's not, like, my style of black metal, but I thought this was pretty good for what it was. So I'm going to give it a 3. might be a little bit close to the 2.5 range, but I think the added song dynamics on some of the later songs kind of, spiced it up a little bit for me. It's cold, it's evil sounding, it's also very sad, and it wants to tell you about how sad it is too. I think the production's pretty solid on here too, considering what they're going for. It's well mixed for being raw sounding. I mean, if you're a fan, again, of like Norwegian black metal, this is what that band is. Like, this band has built a musical bridge all the way from New Jersey to Norway. Either that or I misread and they're in a town in Norway called New Jersey. I don't think I did. They're from New Jersey. And as cold and as icy as they sound, they don't even wear corpse paint. So, I mean, maybe New Jersey's kind of like, the better place for them there.
Maybe.
It's got to be a better place for someone.
Even people I know from Jersey aren't real excited about the fact that they're from Jersey, so.
But yeah, overall, if you like, just icy, cold, kind of raw black metal with some good melodic hooks in there, definitely check this out. This is pretty solid, honestly.
I'm going to give it a 2.5, and part of that could be still the black metal I have listened to, that I really like has things like riffs. As I do get into this more and more, I find that I need something to latch on to other than icy cold tremolo riffs, which are all over this album. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because I do like icy cold tremolo riffs. But for me personally, as a metal listener, and especially getting into black metal, like, I just find that I need something more to latch onto. Now, that's not to state that I thought this record was horrible, because it was still a decent listen. Like, vocally, it's really cool. Like, the guy's doing quite a bit. And in my opinion, I think the vocals even save some of the weaker songs. The melodies were cool. This is still something I'm getting into. And in my opinion, the last 2 songs definitely saved it for me, because it really was darker, and it felt more sinister, and it felt like heavier, and it felt like it was a direction of something I could relate to. I thought the songs tended to drag a little bit, but in the end, who the fuck am I? If you like things like Mayhem and Dark Throne and just creepy cold things, you're probably really gonna like this. And even if it didn't necessarily vibe well with me, knowing what I know about black metal and their following, this is actually probably something you're gonna really dig. So I would still recommend checking it out.
So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel, but at thrallsmetal.com, that's our store. We have shirts, we have new shirts, we have old shirts that are discounted, we have hats. If you're looking for some Thralls merch, that is exactly where to get it.
And last but not least, thank you guys. Thank you for continuing to show up and watch and follow and watch all these videos, man. I was just talking to somebody today. It was like, oh, I just saw your blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't get it, because I don't even watch this shit. But you guys do. And that's what's most important.
I have to. I edit it.
Well, sure. I'm about to start editing it, so I'm sure I'm going to watch it as well and learn to hate myself even more than I currently do. Regardless of all that, we really appreciate you guys sticking around and continuing to show up and interact with us and do all these wonderful things that has turned Thralls of Metal from, a couple jackasses talking about music to a big family. And that's what I've come to really appreciate about Thralls of Metal, is that it's a living, breathing entity now because of you guys. And we appreciate that so much. Thank you so much.
Technically, it's still a couple of jackasses talking.
I mean, it is,
but
let's be honest here.
But anyway, again, thank you guys. You all rule. It is awesome doing this, and he's already pre-gushed, so I don't need to, over-gush. So I'm just going to say thank you once again, and we will catch you later.